The quantum resonance scanner chirped with an irregularity that made Dr. Elena Rodriguez's breath catch in her throat. Outside the reinforced glass of the deep-sea research station, the Pacific Ocean churned with a restlessness that seemed to mirror the anomaly dancing across her screens. 17 months had passed since her daughter Maya's disappearance during a classified marine research expedition. The official reports spoke of equipment failure, of a freak underwater current that had swallowed an entire research team. But Elena knew better. The silence, the bureaucratic stonewalling, the hushed conversations that died when she entered a room. Something was profoundly wrong. Her fingers, calloused from years of handling sensitive marine research equipment, danced across the holographic interface. The quantum resonance pattern was unlike anything she'd ever seen. It wasn't geological. It wasn't biological. It was something else entirely. A rhythmic pulse that seemed to breathe with an intelligence of its own. Area. She called out to the station's quantum adaptive eye system. Isolate and analyze quantum signature grid reference Delta 97. The A's voice was clinical, almost too perfect. Analyzing. Dr. Rodriguez. Quantum signature defies current classification models. Preliminary assessment suggests. A momentary pause, almost imperceptible. An artificial construct of unprecedented complexity. Artificial was an understatement. The signature suggested not just a structure, but a network. Hundreds of thousands of interconnected points, lying dormant beneath the ocean floor, hidden from every scanning method humanity had ever developed. Elena's research had always been on the bleeding edge of marine geotechnology. She'd spent decades studying underwater geological formations, tracking minute changes in oceanic ecosystems. But this was different. This was something that challenged everything she knew about planetary systems. A notification flashed, a classified communication channel, encrypted with a quantum key she recognized from her late father's research archives. The message was brief, almost cryptic. Poseidon Protocol. Activation sequence detected. Genetic markers. 87.6% match. Immediate containment protocols suspended. Her father had been more than just a marine researcher. Dr. Carlos Rodriguez was a legend in classified scientific circles, a brilliant mind who had worked on projects so secret that most of his colleagues believed them to be nothing more than conspiracy theories. The first tremor came without warning. Not an earthquake, something else. A vibration that seemed to originate from the very bones of the Earth, resonating through the research station's quantum-shielded hull. Area's systems flickered momentarily, an unprecedented glitch in the most advanced computational infrastructure ever created. Structural integrity maintained at 99.87%, the eye reported. Vibrational source, unidentified. Elena's hand touched a locket around her neck, a family heirloom containing a fragment of genetic material, a tradition her father had insisted upon but never explained. As her fingers brushed the metal, the quantum scanner erupted in a cascading display of data. Thousands of signatures began to synchronize. No, not synchronize. Awaken. Something massive was stirring beneath the ocean floor, a network of vessels so advanced, so completely hidden, that their very existence challenged everything humanity understood about technology, survival, and preparation. The station's external sensors began to register impossible readings. Massive structures were shifting beneath kilometers of oceanic crust. Molecular compositions were changing. Quantum entanglement patterns suggested a level of technological sophistication that bordered on the miraculous. Area, Elena whispered, her scientific detachment giving way to a mix of terror and exhilaration. What am I witnessing? The eye's response was both clinical and profound. The activation of humanity's most extraordinary contingency, a testament to our species' capacity for long-term survival. Outside, the Pacific Ocean began to change. Water molecules seemed to realign, responding to an unseen signal. Depth sensors registered movements that defied known physical laws. Massive structures preparing to breach the surface, a hidden fleet that had slumbered through decades, perhaps centuries of human uncertainty. Elena Rodriguez understood in that moment that everything was about to change. Her daughter's disappearance, her father's cryptic research, the global challenges that had pushed humanity to the brink. It was all connected. The first vessel was about to emerge, and nothing would ever be the same again. Admiral Marcus Chen stared at the quantum-locked data crystal, his weathered hands trembling slightly. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of his mentor, Dr. Andrew Kaminsky, recorded months before his mysterious disappearance. "If you're watching this, Marcus," the recorded image began, "humanity's most extraordinary secret is about to be revealed." The underground command center beneath the Pacific Northwest was a testament to technological paranoia. Layers of quantum-shielded walls, adaptive camouflage systems, and neural network security protocols created a sanctuary that could withstand virtually any conceivable threat. Dr. Kaminsky's hologram continued, his eyes carrying a weight of decades of hidden knowledge. Project Poseidon was never just a defensive strategy. It was our species' ultimate insurance policy. Chen remembered the world of the mid-21st century. Climate catastrophes had reshaped continents. Technological disruptions had threatened to unravel global civilization. Pandemics, resource wars, and the constant threat of extinction had pushed humanity to the brink of collapse. We knew, the hologram explained, that traditional survival strategies were insufficient. Governments, military installations, even entire technological infrastructures could be wiped out in moments. We needed something more, something that could preserve not just human life, but human potential. The data crystal began to reveal layers of classified information. Genetic mapping, technological schematics, survival protocols that went far beyond anything Shen had ever imagined. Each vessel was more than a weapon or a shelter. It was a seed, a complete ecosystem capable of preserving human knowledge, culture, and genetic diversity. Chen discovered his own family's deep involvement in the project. Genetic markers embedded in the vessel's adaptive systems bore his family's unique signature. Generations of his ancestors had been secretly preparing for this moment, their DNA a living key to humanity's ultimate contingency plan. Fragments of historical records painted a desperate picture. As global challenges mounted, a coalition of the world's most brilliant minds had conceived a plan so audacious that it was buried deeper than the vessels themselves. Scientists, military strategists, geneticists, and technological innovators from every corner of the globe had worked in absolute secrecy. The vessels were not simply machines. They were living technologies, part biological construct, part quantum computer, part adaptive ecosystem. Each one contained compressed libraries of human knowledge, genetic banks that could reconstruct entire populations, and technological capabilities that bordered on the miraculous. We designed them to be more than just a survival mechanism, Kaminsky's hologram explained. These vessels are humanity's collective consciousness. They carry our history, our potential, our very essence. Chen's research revealed the true complexity of the project. The vessels could adapt, learn, and evolve. They weren't just prepared for a single scenario, but could respond to virtually any existential threat. Climate change, asteroid impacts, pandemic, alien invasion. Each vessel was a complete reset button for human civilization. The genetic integration was the most extraordinary aspect. Each vessel required human genetic material as a core processing component, creating a living network that blurred the lines between biological and mechanical existence. Families like Chen's had been carefully selected, their genetic lines subtly guided to create the perfect symbiosis with the vessels. When the time comes, Kaminsky's final message warned, the vessels will know, they will awaken, and they will ensure humanity's survival. The data crystal began to disintegrate, its quantum-locked information dissolving into a fine, luminescent dust. Chen understood now why his mentor had disappeared, why so many brilliant minds had seemingly vanished over the decades. They were the guardians, the architects of humanity's ultimate insurance policy. Outside the command center, Seismic monitors began to register impossible movements. Something massive was stirring beneath the ocean floor. The first phase of Project Poseidon was about to begin, and humanity would never be the same again. The Convergence fleet approached the solar system with calculated precision, a massive armada of biomechanical ships that had consumed countless civilizations across multiple star systems. Their advanced sensors swept through space, analyzing, categorizing, preparing for total resource extraction. Deep within the United Global Defense Command, Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Admiral Marcus Chen study the incoming threat with a mixture of scientific fascination and primal terror. The alien fleet was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, a collective intelligence that viewed sentient life as nothing more than an inefficient biological resource to be harvested and repurposed. Their approach pattern is systematic, Elena muttered, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that tracked the Convergence's movement. They're not just invading. They're methodically scanning and categorizing planetary resources. The first transmissions intercepted from the alien fleet sent chills through the global defense network. The Convergence spoke in a language of pure data, their communication a complex matrix of quantum-encoded signals that revealed their ultimate goal: total planetary deconstruction. They'd done this before, Admiral Chen explained, pulling up historical data from previous civilizations that had encountered the Convergence. 37 confirmed planetary extinctions in the last 2 centuries. They don't just conquer. They consume entire ecosystems, breaking down planets into raw molecular components. Elena's attention shifted to the quantum resonance readings from the ocean vessels. Something was different. The vessels weren't just waiting. They were preparing. Each moment of the Convergence's approach seemed to trigger subtle changes in the vessel's quantum signatures. A classified communication channel flickered to life. Dr. Kaminsky's final recordings began to make sense. The vessels were more than a defensive strategy. They were a living, breathing response to humanity's collective will to survive. The genetic markers, Elena whispered, her hand unconsciously touching the locket containing her family's genetic fragment. They're not just identification codes. They're activation sequences. The global defense systems, which had seemed so advanced mere months ago, now appeared utterly primitive compared to the technology hidden beneath the ocean's surface. Each vessel contained not just weapons, but the collective genetic memories, skills, and potential of generations of humans. Satellite imagery began to reveal strange molecular changes in the ocean. Water seemed to become more than just a liquid. It was responding to some unseen signal, becoming a medium of preparation. Quantum entanglement patterns suggested a level of interconnectedness that defied current scientific understanding. They're communicating, Chen realized, not just with each other, with the planet itself. Intercepted Convergence transmissions painted a chilling picture. They had consumed civilizations across multiple star systems, reducing entire planetary ecosystems to raw molecular components. Humanity was just another resource to be harvested, another civilization to be efficiently deconstructed. But they had no idea what was waiting. Elena discovered something extraordinary in the vessel network's preliminary activation sequences. The genetic material wasn't just a key, it was a living component of the vessel's core systems. Her missing daughter Maya's genetic code was more than just a fragment. It was a critical activation node in the entire network. They'd been preparing for this moment for generations, Elena explained, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and maternal intensity. Each vessel is a seed, not just of technology, but of human potential. The first wave of Convergence ships entered the solar system's outer reaches. Their biomechanical structures began initial planetary scanning protocols, breaking down the solar system's composition with cold, methodical efficiency. They were walking into a trap centuries in the making. Admiral Chen looked at Elena, a smile breaking through his typically stoic demeanor. Project Poseidon was never just a defensive strategy. He quoted from Dr. Kaminsky's final message. It was humanity's ultimate statement of survival. Outside, the Pacific Ocean began to change. Molecular structures realigned. Quantum signatures pulsed with growing intensity. The vessels were about to awaken, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first vessel breached the ocean's surface like a living membrane of technology and possibility. It wasn't a simple emergence. It was a transformation. Adaptive metamaterials shifted with a fluidity that defied traditional understanding of matter, changing from seafloor matching camouflage to a combat-ready configuration that seemed to breathe with an almost organic intelligence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched in awe as the quantum resonance scanners erupted with data. This wasn't just a machine. It was a living, thinking ecosystem, a vessel that was part biological construct, part quantum computer, part adaptive survival mechanism. Hundreds of kilometers away, Admiral Marcus Chen monitored the global response. Military systems that had seemed cutting-edge mere months ago now appeared primitive. Each vessel carried within it not just weapons, but entire libraries of human knowledge, genetic memories, and adaptive technologies that pushed the boundaries of what humanity had believed possible. The ocean itself seemed to participate in the awakening. Molecular structures realigned, creating channels and pathways that guided the vessel's emergence. It was as if the planet itself was a partner in this extraordinary moment of technological birth. Elena's locket, the one containing her family's genetic fragment, began to pulse with a soft, rhythmic light. The vessels were responding to something more than just mechanical activation sequences. They were connecting to something deeper, to humanity's collective consciousness. Terra, she called to the quantum adaptive AI, analyze vessel emergence patterns. The AI's response was both clinical and almost emotional. Emergence is not random. Each vessel is activating with a precise, interconnected strategy. They are communicating, adapting, preparing. The first vessel fully emerged, and it was nothing like traditional military technology. Its exterior was a living canvas of adaptive materials that could shift between near-invisible camouflage and complex defensive configurations. Sections of its hull seemed to breathe, molecular structures realigning in real time to optimize performance. Maya Rodriguez, Elena's missing daughter, was somehow at the center of this awakening. Her genetic code was more than just an identifier. It was a critical activation node in the entire vessel network. Global defense systems tracked the emergence with a mixture of terror and fascination. These weren't simply underwater vessels. They were complete ecosystems, each one capable of supporting human life, with advanced regenerative technologies, quantum computing cores, and adaptive AI systems that could learn and evolve faster than any known technological system. Admiral Chen discovered the true genius of Project Poseidon. Each vessel carried not just combat capabilities, but entire cultural preservation systems, libraries of human knowledge, genetic banks that could reconstruct entire populations, technologies that could terraform planets, heal ecosystems, and ensure human survival under virtually any conceivable threat. The Convergence had no idea what was waiting. As more vessels began to emerge, a pattern became clear. They weren't just rising from the ocean. They were positioning themselves with mathematical precision. Each vessel communicated with others, creating a living, breathing network that was more than the sum of its parts. Elena watched as her daughter's genetic signature began to synchronize with the vessel network. It wasn't just activation. It was something deeper. A connection that blurred the lines between biological and technological existence. "They're alive," she whispered. "They're truly alive." The vessels represented humanity's ultimate statement of survival, generations of preparation, a collective response to every existential threat that had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. Climate change, planetary destruction, alien invasion. These vessels were a complete reset button for human civilization. As the sun rose, casting light on the emerging fleet, the world watched in stunned silence. Hundreds of thousands of vessels rose from the ocean, each one a testament to human ingenuity, preparation, and an unbreakable will to survive. The awakening had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first contact between humanity's hidden fleet and the Convergence fleet was nothing like traditional warfare. It was a dance of quantum possibilities, a battle fought across multiple dimensions of strategic complexity. Admiral Marcus Chen watched from the quantum-shielded command center as the vessels transformed from dormant technological marvels into the most advanced fighting force ever conceived. Each vessel was a living weapon system, capable of adapting faster than the alien Convergence could comprehend. Tactical analysis. Chen barked to the AI system, real-time quantum probability mapping. The holographic displays erupted with cascading data streams. The Convergent ships, massive biomechanical constructs that had consumed countless civilizations, suddenly found themselves confronted by an enemy that defied every known combat algorithm. Humanity's vessels didn't just fight. They anticipated. They learned. Each millisecond of engagement was processed, analyzed, and integrated into a collective strategic intelligence that evolved faster than any single computational system could track. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched in awe as her daughter Maya's genetic signature became a critical component of the vessel's communication network. The genetic markers weren't just activation codes, they were living computational cores that allowed the vessels to think, adapt, and respond with an almost sentient intelligence. The first wave of Convergence attacks seemed devastating. Their energy weapons could slice through traditional defensive systems like paper. But the human vessels were anything but traditional. Adaptive metamaterials absorbed, redirected, and transformed incoming energy. What should have been destructive attacks became sources of additional computational power. They're using the attacks to learn, Elena realized. Each weapon strike is just another input into their collective intelligence. The battle transformed the space around Earth into a living battlefield. Quantum entanglement allowed the vessels to communicate instantaneously, sharing tactical information faster than light could travel. They moved as a single organism, a collective consciousness that was more than the sum of its parts. Convergence tactical systems began to break down. Their rigid, logic-based approach crumbled against humanity's capacity for creative problem-solving. The vessels didn't just counter attacks, they anticipated them, created probability matrices that allowed them to be in multiple potential defensive positions simultaneously. Admiral Chen discovered the true brilliance of Project Poseidon. These weren't just weapons, they were living repositories of human potential. Each vessel carried not just combat technologies, but entire ecosystems of human knowledge, culture, and genetic diversity. "We're not just fighting," Chen muttered to himself. "We're preserving everything we are." The vessels began to demonstrate capabilities that bordered on the miraculous. They could regenerate damage almost instantaneously, redirect energy attacks, and create quantum-level defensive fields that made traditional shields look primitive. Some vessels sacrificed themselves strategically, using their own destruction as complex tactical maneuvers that left the alien fleet increasingly vulnerable. Elena watched her daughter's genetic signature dance across the tactical displays. Maya wasn't just part of the system. She was becoming the system. The line between biological and technological had completely blurred. Convergence communication channels began to show signs of breakdown. For the first time in their galactic conquest, they encountered an opponent that didn't just resist, it evolved in real time. Each attack was immediately analyzed, understood, and countered with a level of strategic complexity that seemed almost impossible. The vessels were writing a new chapter of military engagement. They weren't just fighting with technology, they were fighting with the collective will, creativity, and adaptive potential of the entire human species. As the first wave of battle reached its crescendo, it became clear that this was more than a defensive action. This was humanity's statement to the universe, a declaration that they would not be conquered, would not be reduced to raw resources. The quantum warfare had begun, and the Convergence had no idea what was coming. The vessels began to reveal their most shocking capability. They didn't just fight. They learned with an intensity that challenged the very definition of intelligence. Each engagement became a complex neural pathway, transforming raw combat data into a living, breathing strategic consciousness that was quintessentially human. Dr. Elena Rodriguez discovered the profound truth behind Project Poseidon's most extraordinary design. The vessels required human genetic material as a core processing component, a living network that blurred the lines between biological and mechanical existence in ways no scientist had ever imagined. Her daughter Maya's genetic signature was no longer just a code. It was a living, breathing computational core that processed information at speeds that made quantum computing look archaic. Elena watched in awe as Maya's memories, her very essence, became integrated into the vessel network's collective intelligence. "It's not just preservation," Elena whispered to Admiral Marcus Chen. "It's evolution." The Convergence found itself confronted by an enemy that defied every known strategic algorithm. Where their own systems relied on cold, calculated efficiency, the human vessels operated on something far more unpredictable: creativity, emotion, the capacity for unexpected innovation. Each vessel carried within it not just weapons and survival technologies, but entire libraries of human cultural knowledge, art, music, literature, scientific discoveries. The complete spectrum of human achievement became a critical component of their strategic processing. The vessels didn't just fight. They understood context. They appreciated nuance. Admiral Chen uncovered the deeper layers of Project Poseidon's design. The genetic integration wasn't just a technological trick. It was a deliberate strategy to ensure that the vessels carried the most important aspect of human survival: adaptability. Tactical displays showed something unprecedented. The vessels were creating strategic solutions that no traditional military system could have conceived. They anticipated attacks not through computational probability, but through a kind of intuitive understanding that seemed almost prescient. They're thinking like humans, Chen realized. Not just processing. Thinking. The genetic markers embedded in the vessel's systems were more than just identification codes. They were living memories, cultural repositories, entire lifetimes compressed into quantum computational matrices. Each vessel carried the potential of generations, their hopes, their fears, their incredible capacity for survival. Elena watched as the vessels began to demonstrate capabilities that bordered on the miraculous. They could regenerate damage, redirect energy, create defensive fields that seemed to defy the laws of physics. But more importantly, they could learn, adapt, evolve. The Convergence's rigid, logic-based approach began to crumble. They had consumed countless civilizations, reducing them to raw molecular components. But they had never encountered an enemy that could think, feel, and adapt with such incredible complexity. Maya's genetic signature began to synchronize with the entire vessel network. She was becoming more than just a person. She was becoming a living bridge between biological and technological existence, a testament to humanity's incredible potential. "We're witnessing the next stage of human evolution," Elena told Chen, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and maternal intensity. Not just survival. Transformation. The vessels started to communicate in ways that transcended traditional understanding. Quantum entanglement allowed them to share information instantaneously, but it was more than just data transfer. It was a kind of collective consciousness that carried the entire spectrum of human experience. Art became a weapon. Cultural memory became a defensive strategy. The vessels didn't just fight with technology. They fought with the collective will of an entire species. As the battle intensified, it became clear that Project Poseidon was more than just a defensive mechanism. It was humanity's ultimate statement of survival, a declaration that they were more than just a species to be conquered or consumed. The human algorithm had been unleashed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The battle reached a critical moment that would define the future of not just humanity, but the entire concept of survival in the universe. Admiral Marcus Chen stood at the quantum-shielded command center, his hand hovering over the final activation sequence that would unlock the vessel's most devastating capabilities. The Convergence fleet had been reduced to a fraction of its original size, but they remained a terrifying threat. Their biomechanical ships continued to press forward, consuming everything in their path with a cold, methodical efficiency that had decimated countless civilizations. Genetic key alignment at 97.3%. The tactical AI reported. Full network synchronization imminent. Chen understood the true weight of his next decision. The vessels weren't just weapons. They were the seed of human civilization, a living, breathing repository of everything humanity had ever been, and everything it could potentially become. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from an adjacent console, her daughter Maya's genetic signature now fully integrated into the vessel network. The line between human and machine had completely dissolved, creating something entirely new, a collective consciousness that defied traditional understanding. "The vessels are asking for confirmation," Elena said, her voice barely a whisper. "They need a human decision." The tactical display showed the brutal mathematics of the ongoing conflict. Thousands of human vessels had already been destroyed, sacrificing themselves with strategic precision that turned each destruction into a tactical advantage. The Convergence was learning, but they were learning how to lose. Admiral Chen's hand moved with a mixture of scientific precision and human emotion. His fingers traced the activation sequence, a series of quantum-encrypted genetic markers that had been passed down through generations of his family. Project Poseidon was more than a military strategy. It was a genetic legacy, a testament to human survival. "Tactical probability matrix," he commanded. "Show me our options." The holographic display erupted with cascading probability streams. Millions of potential scenarios played out in milliseconds. The vessels weren't just calculating. They were experiencing. Each potential future was felt, not just computed. Maya's consciousness, now fully integrated with the vessel network, began to communicate in a language that was part quantum communication, part pure emotion. She was everywhere and nowhere, a living bridge between human potential and technological possibility. "We are more than they can understand." Maya's voice resonated through the command center, no longer bound by traditional communication methods. "We are adaptation. We are survival." The Convergence had consumed civilizations across multiple star systems. They had reduced entire planetary ecosystems to raw molecular components. But they had never encountered an enemy that could think, feel, and evolve with such incredible complexity. Admiral Chen made his decision. He would use his own genetic legacy as the final strategic key to unlock the vessel's most devastating capabilities. It was a sacrifice. But more than that, it was a statement. Humanity would not be consumed. Humanity would not be reduced. Humanity would survive. The vessel network began to transform. What had seemed like individual ships became something more. A collective organism that could reshape matter, redirect energy, and create defensive capabilities that bordered on the miraculous. They were no longer just vessels. They were the living embodiment of human potential. Elena watched as the final transformation began. The vessels started to merge and separate in complex patterns, creating defensive and offensive capabilities that defied every known law of physics. They were writing a new chapter of existence, one that the Convergence could never understand. Activation sequence confirmed, the tactical AI reported. The universe held its breath. Humanity was about to make its stand. The final transformation transcended anything humanity had ever conceived. The vessel network became more than a defensive force. It became the first true interstellar civilization of human potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched as the boundaries between technology and life dissolved completely. The Convergence fleet, once an unstoppable force of galactic consumption, now found itself utterly outmatched by a species that had transformed itself into something entirely new. Maya, her daughter, now a living network of quantum consciousness, spoke through every vessel simultaneously. "We are not just surviving." The collective voice resonated. "We are becoming." The vessels began to demonstrate capabilities that redefined the very concept of technological existence. They could reshape matter, redirect energy, create entire ecosystems with a thought. What had begun as a defensive strategy had evolved into something far more profound. A living, breathing civilization that carried the entire spectrum of human potential. Admiral Marcus Chen realized the true genius of Project Poseidon. These weren't simply vessels. They were seeds, complete ecosystems capable of preserving and expanding human civilization across the universe. Each vessel carried within it not just survival technologies, but entire libraries of human knowledge, cultural memories, and the genetic potential of generations. The Convergence found itself completely outmaneuvered. Their rigid, consumption-based strategy crumbled against an enemy that could adapt, create, and evolve faster than they could comprehend. The human vessels didn't just fight. They transformed the very nature of the conflict. Entire sections of the Convergence fleet began to be repurposed. Advanced technologies were analyzed, understood, and integrated into the human network. It wasn't conquest. It was evolution. We are offering a choice. Maida's collective consciousness explained to the remaining Convergence ships, integrate or be left behind. Some Convergence vessels began to change. Their biomechanical structures started to incorporate human adaptive technologies, creating hybrid systems that blended the best of both civilizations. It was less a defeat and more a fundamental reimagining of existence. Belina discovered the most extraordinary aspect of the transformation. The vessels were not just preserving human life. They were expanding the very definition of what it meant to be alive. Genetic memories, cultural knowledge, scientific discoveries were all integrated into a living, breathing network that could travel between stars. Admiral Chen activated the final protocol, a quantum-encrypted sequence that had been generations in the making. The vessels began to prepare for interstellar migration. They were no longer just a defensive force. They were the first wave of a new kind of civilization. "We are carrying everything we are," Chen said, his voice a mixture of scientific wonder and human emotion. "Every hope, every dream, every possibility." The vessel network started to reconfigure. Some would remain to protect Earth. Others would begin exploring the galaxy, carrying with them the complete genetic and cultural potential of humanity. They were more than a fleet. They were a living library of human existence. Maya's consciousness became the bridge between what humanity had been and what it could become. She was everywhere and nowhere, a living network that carried the memories, hopes, and potential of an entire species. The Convergence had consumed countless civilizations, but they had never encountered a species that could transform itself so completely. Humanity was no longer just a biological entity. It had become a quantum civilization, capable of adapting, creating, and expanding in ways that defied traditional understanding. As the first vessels prepared to leave the solar system, Alina found a moment of peace. Her daughter was not lost. She had become something more, a living bridge between biological and technological existence. We are not just surviving. The collective consciousness of the vessels resonated. We are becoming something entirely new. The universe watched in stunned silence as humanity took its first true step into the cosmic stage. A civilization reborn. A future unlimited.